Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and today I set my critical eye on cats, lasers, and drug-induced environments with my review of Neko Navy. It comes out today on Steam for $10.99, and is published by Fruit Bat Factory, who always perks my interest with their releases, due to having some really underappreciated games in the War of Human Tanks series and Enigma. And before you ask, yes, there will be horrible cat puns throughout this video, and no, I'm not going to apologize for it. But before I begin, this key was obtained from the publisher for the purposes of review. Now that won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? So let's start with the basics. Neko Navy is a shoot 'em up where you fly a cat in the air and have him shoot down various enemies, ranging from prescription drugs to an environment's local flora. At the start of the game, you can select 3 different cats with various bullet patterns, although you will get more options as you beat the game. The 3 starting ones are pretty typical for the genre, ranging from the straightforward fire one to a less strong but better range spread. Your job is simple: don't die, and get to the end of the stage and defeat its boss. There are 7 stages in total in the game, and there are 3 difficulties: easy, hard, and death. Now, I'd classify Neko Navy in the SHMUP category, and not the bullet hell one. There are sections where you're dodging a lot of bullets, of course, but the difficulty here is reasonably less than games like Mushihime-sama. Granted, with only being able to take 1 hit at the center dot of your cat, hard and death will still be a challenge given the game's construction. But you don't have to be pawsome at shmups to get through a couple of stages, at least at first here. To do that, however, you'll need to master the game's controls, and that will take you a little bit of time to get used to them. As you can see on the screen, despite playing in 1080p, the game's actual playable area only takes about 80% of the screen up. This leads to you feeling a little bit claustrophobic, at least more than other games in the genre that I've played lately. The speed of your cat is a little bit slower than most shmups out there, and while I wouldn't classify the controls as slippery per se, it also isn't necessarily tight either. In death difficulty in particular, there can be some moments where you're backed into the corner, and you don't have the precision that you truly need to get through a section. But that's one of the weird things about Neko Navy in terms of the gameplay right off the bat. It sorta works for the environment and the gameplay structure here, even with the little hiccups in technical and gameplay design that I normally hammer on. The best way I can describe this is like a B-horror movie. The little flaws here that I would criticize in a vacuum end up coming together in a strange yet workable way. Take the special weapon system, for example. As you kill enemies, they will drop these cat-like icons, and you will gain meter for your special when you get them. Once you have a special, depending on your cat choice, you will be able to do a mega attack, whether it be launching a giant green ball of energy, or literally filling up the screen with lightning. During this time, enemies killed become these orange cubes, which give more score points, and you're invulnerable a good 5 to 8 seconds when you use it. The invulnerability is standard for the genre, and it usually works to get you out of a catastrophe. Yes, I'm still doing the puns. But unlike other games in the genre, I found myself spending my special a hell of a lot more than normal in Neko Navy, and that has to do with gaining extra lives. You earn a ton of points if you're able to destroy bullets and enemies on the screen with your special making those orange boxes. Enough where it was a serious factor that you'd have to take into your playstyle. Other games do this, of course, but they never overshadowed the special's use as invulnerability like Neko Navy did for me. And that's the thing, when Neko Navy is trying something a little bit different like that, I really started to enjoy the game. That's the thing about this genre. It can feel like if you played one, you played a good amount of them. So when Neko Navy pulls out a boss that has multiple heads and throws them at you in a weird cyclic form, it starts to stand out. Or when it goes a little bit angular in this boss section here, and you have to dodge rocks and lasers in a little bit of a different way. One that made me panic in ways that I hadn't before. But I have to pull back the reins here a little bit, because I'm making it sound like the game revolutionizes the genre. And it doesn't. In fact, a good amount of it follows the formula that you've seen before. Enemies and their bullet patterns are relatively normal, and the game doesn't throw anything too crazy at you in terms of that, even at the harder difficulties. Sure, harder difficulties bullets seemingly are a tiny bit faster and more numerous, but nothing too crazy in the end. Which is fine. In fact, I think that Neko Navy does a lot of things right, in particular in the difficulty area of the game. It feels balanced correctly here. A new player to the genre comes in at easy and gets their feet wet, while still getting a reasonable challenge later on in the game. Death feels like only veterans should face it, as it'll kick your ass here and there, and you'll have to memorize enemy patterns and stage progression. Hard is right slab in the middle of those two. So okay, I've said a bunch of good things about Neko Navy so far. Good but not great controls, good difficulty curve, and it feels like it stands out a tiny bit compared to the rest of the genre. So what's the bad news, you may be asking? Well, the bad news is the content itself. With 7 stages, you think that'd be enough to keep you interested at the $10 price tag. And maybe I'm expecting too much out of a game at that price point. But when it comes to variance over time, which I think is important in the genre, that's where things start to fall apart for Neko Navy. The thing is, while you can play with the different cats and their different fire powers, the core gameplay is the same from run to run in terms of enemy placement, with no variation in them reacting to your movement. Now, you may say Dragnix. That's not uncommon in the genre, and you'd be right to a certain extent. However, most of those other game variants make up for it in other areas, whether it be power-ups, length of the game, or just sheer difficulty. Neko Navy, on the other hand, doesn't take advantage of any of those other elements, and you really start to see the lack of variation over time. Just be saying for them to add power-ups other than basic main weapon upgrades, or something to make runs different, would hurt the balance of the main gameplay here that focuses on your placement and timeliness of your special ability. And I really do like this core gameplay balance and difficulty like I mentioned before. But here's the thing about shmups in particular. They are one of the biggest niche audiences out there from what I've seen. A reasonable shmup fan is always looking for that next game, that next fix. The thing about Neko Navy is that even though it has those shmup elements, and has some things that make it stand out a tiny bit in certain other areas, none of those unique factors are strong enough to pull that hardcore audience, at least in my opinion. Now, this is in the modern day Steam landscape, mind you. I would have definitely said yes to that query if the game came out a couple of years ago, but there have been too many ports of strong games in the genre, like Mushihime-sama, and really colorful and interesting variations in gameplay in games like Roche Fusion. Neko Navy is solid, but the $10 price tag going up against those other games of equivalent cost is where the game faces a mountain of reasonable competitors. It misses something that I always talk about with indie games. It doesn't have that knockout punch. That punch that draws you in and forces you to pay attention to that game. In addition, there are also moments in the game that design-wise, they ended up really irritating me due to the fact that the player had to see the situation coming in order to deal with it. Take this section here, for example, and the fish enemies that start on the left of the screen jumping towards the top. Note at no point during this section does the game give you the room to maneuver around this, and you basically have to waste your special attack to dodge it. I don't like the fact that those caught off guard without meter will get punished the first time of the game in this section, especially when the game is giving you every incentive to use your special in order to get more lives in the game. In fact, I have to ask the developer here, are you kidding me with this section? Now, there's only 2 to 3 parts in the game like this, so once you see it once, you'll be more prepared for the next time around. It's still annoying as all hell, however, and sometimes you completely forget about it, and lo and behold, you're sorta screwed. Changing gears a bit, the aesthetic, while comical and does get a variation of awes and WTFs out of me, it's a little bit low random for my taste overall, even when I like each individual level in the game. And I like that each level has a main theme it works off of. However, sometimes you get that theme broken with a prior enemy coming back for no good reason, and it breaks the overall aesthetic. The pills make perfect sense in the doctor's area, but when it's just sort of showing up in other worlds, then I'm wondering what pills the creator is on. With no written story that you're working off of, this is really important for world building. And yes, even games like these have world building. In terms of artwork, however, the line and color work here definitely gives the game a nice cartoonish style, which reminds me of the aesthetics of Alien Hominid in a way. The game doesn't give off the impression that it's developed by a Japanese developer at all with its style, which isn't a knock for or against the game. It just surprises me, that's all. It's not the greatest of artwork, but it also has that X factor. It's just charming. I mean, just look at some of these characters and designs. They're just adorable. Sound design is pretty standard here. You get little beeps when you pick things up, a nice set of tones when you're shooting your weapon, and a cool meow when you gain an extra life. Just like the rest of the game, it's pretty solid, but not spectacular. Have you figured out that's my opinion of the game yet? Anyway, take a listen to see what I'm talking about. As for the music of the game, well, the game is pretty generic when it comes to the game's music. See a pattern here? It screams standard shmup track list and appropriate themes for each level. So take a listen to hear what I'm talking about. Here's the thing about Neko Navy in the end. It's the kind of game that's a great introduction to the genre, keeping things rather simple for those unfamiliar with its mechanics, but allowing the player over time to get more used to things and to challenge themselves a little more. The game is solid in most areas, and I enjoyed my first few runs with the game. The problem came with replayability, and those veterans of the genre may find the game just doesn't have the punch that others do. If you're looking for variety and content, that's not what Neko Navy delivers, and you'll find yourself clawing through kitty litter trying to find treasure, only to realize you've cleaned out the box a long time ago. However, if you can be persuaded by its art style and new to shmups, it's the perfect choice to get you into and get your feet wet into the genre. Anyway, this is Dragnix signing out, and I don't know what the next video will be. I do want to do some design videos on Persona 5. I've got a lot of footage, and honestly, that game really truly deserves it. If you haven't read my review of 5 minutes or the 60-minute version, I'll put the links in the description below. In addition, I want to get back to games like this in terms of regular content. I know I've been doing a lot bigger games over the last 2 months, games like Nier Automata, Persona 5, but I think the bread and butter of this channel is the games that you may not have heard of. Games like Fury, games like Valhalla, and showing you guys games that you may not have considered, but hey, they're really good, you should probably play them. Anyway, leave your feedback and comments or games that you want me to review in the comments section below. And I'll see you all later. And as always, keep on gaming.